Occasionally, I like to take a break from electronics and just look at random plumbing components, and this time it's the turn of toilet flush systems and how they compare against American ones versus European ones. Although, to be honest, I don't know how many of these are globally used around the world. So let's start with the flap valve, which is available over here but may not comply with our regulations for some reason. I think it's because of the risk of water leakage around the seal here. But this must be one of the simplest I've ever seen. It also has a limit on whether you can half flush or full flush. I think it's pretty much all one hit and that's it. Although I've noticed there is an adjustment here, not sure what that's for. Anyway, I first came across this when I was visiting America. For a few years in a row, I went to America, and in one of the hotel bedrooms, the toilet, which was one of those siphon toilets, this thing was leaking, and it was just filling up to the siphon level, and every so often it would suddenly siphon. Just a bit disturbing when the toilet keeps flushing itself in the middle of the night. So I went and took the lid off the cistern and discovered this. And if they do that, if they have that issue, all you have to do is just run your finger around the seal here and under there, and it kind of fixes it. It's usually just a bit of grit or dirt or just general watery, slimy residue that you get in water tanks has built up. But I was really impressed. I thought that was clever because all the way this works is it relies on the weight of the water actually holding this flap down. Almost like if this was a pipe, it's almost the equivalent of just putting your hand over it to block the water going down it. And when you flush it, all that happens is you pull the chain and that pops up. And because it's buoyant, because there's an air void in here, it then floats while the water pours down. And it does have this rotary option which lets you choose possibly the rate at which the water, it might be the point at which the water comes below this or something. I'm not really sure. It doesn't seem like it would give much control. There is another feature of this, and it is the overflow up here. If water flows down the overflow, it bypasses the valve and can come straight out this slot here. I don't know if you can see that. I shall illuminate it and then you shall see it. There's the slot there. And that does two things. It means that if the toilet cistern overfills, the water will go over the top here and it will just go down into the pan, and you'll get an obvious sign that, you'll see the water going into the pan. But it also has the function with the siphon toilets that the water cistern fill mechanism doesn't just fill the tank, it also feeds a little pipe which clips on the edge of this and it drizzles water down there. So even with this down, a little bit of water while it's filling will actually flow out this. And the reason for that is to top up the siphon and bring the water level up in the toilet without actually causing it to siphon again. It's very simple. I have to say, I have one of these fitted here just because I thought it was really novel and I thought it was interesting. I used it to replace the classic British one. I shall show you that later. I'll show you this one though. This is really common in Britain now. And for saying that they don't like the flap valves, this is the equivalent thing, but the difference is there's the valve going up and down, but it is just a silicone rubber washer against a seal, so it's pretty much the same thing. But this one has the dual flush function. If you press the half flush, which is pushing the small button here, if you watch the plunger here, it goes up about, say, just over half an inch, about, say, 15 millimeters. But if you push the main button here, it goes up much further. It goes right into the unit, and that's actually how this system works. So before I go any further, I'm just going to show you some doodles of these. But things worthy of note, you can adjust the half flush by clicking this up and down, and this is actually a little water float that floats up inside, and when it goes down it releases a mechanism. But there's also another float under here that you can regulate the speed at which the water drains out of here to actually determine how quickly it ends the flush. I'm not really sure how useful that is. I'm not sure. They've put it there. There must be a function. A really clever thing about this, it's all very modular. You can basically press this catch in, and this is useful to know if you've got one of these toilet cisterns. Press this catch in and it will just pop off the bottom. Likewise, when you want to put it back in, just push the catch in, click it on, and that's it in place. But the mechanism is so clever. It's because it's simple. I shall unscrew this. This basically, you put this through the top of the cistern, and then you put this sort of cup at the back, and then you tighten this onto it. But it has that double plunger system that goes out a short distance or a long distance. Short distance, long distance. And the only difference is that the little extra plunger here hits an end stop and it stops you pushing the other plunger down, because if you then slid your finger off that little end stop, it would go down the full way. It's just an end stop for your finger when you press that. Very clever. Okay, now let's bring in the notepad and I'll show you roughly what's in these, and then I'm going to open this one up so you can actually take a look inside it. Well, so I can take a look inside it as well. I have a rough idea how it works, but I've never actually opened one fully yet. So I'll put that out of the way. I'll bring in the notepad and I'll show you the horrible toilet cisterns that we used to have in the UK, the horrible systems. So the traditional British toilet cistern, typical tank of water, and there's the, I'll draw it off to the side actually, just because it leaves more room, but there's the outlet, it's actually in the centre. And the siphon used to come up and it was a mechanism that looked like this. It would come down and then it would sort of open out into a sort of bell like that. And inside that was a plunger. And the plunger was it's just cheap, shitty plastic, as you'd expect. And if you were to look on top of that plunger, it will just be, it's shaped to the inside of that. And it's either got holes on it or it's got like segments out it for the reason to let water flow through it and also to support the valve. The valve was just basically a plastic, thin sheet of plastic that just lays across that. I should zoom down in this. It's going to look a lot. It's going to look bigger if I zoom down. But it's got that thin sheet of plastic, and when you flush it, there's simply a shaft going down through here, connected to the flush system that pulls it up the way. And there's a couple of interesting things here. Firstly, for the basic flush, the traditional one, this would have filled up with water to, say, below that level, and if it went any further, it would effectively go over that itself. So that was an overflow, though you often had another overflow as well to give a visual indication that something was wrong, as if water flowing into the bowl was not enough. That also, they sometimes have what's called a tundrish, which is a little cup with a sort of window effectively through it and the pipe, so you can see the water dribbling down. It's all red tape, it's strange. But anyway, when you flushed it, it would force the water up in here. That one-way sort of plastic flap would go down, it would force the water up, it would go over the top, and it would start the siphon. And then because the water was flowing up the way, it would push that plastic flap up. But there's an interesting system that if you want the half flush, some of them have little sort of blockable studs halfway down it. Others have grooves on the actual, the plunger here, that if you hold it up, and hold it up, you don't let it drop back down, but you just hold the handle down. Because those grooves move up above this area, when the water level gets down below this point, the air will then flow in there and it will break the siphon and it will stop. So that's the half flush. Other ones seem to rely that when you pulled it up, it would then block, it would initially start that, but it would block those holes. So if you kept the handle down, it would flush all the way. But if you just flushed it and let go, it would clear those holes and then it would only do a half flush. It's this half flush, full flush, pee or poo. Okay, let's take a look at that other one that I'm about to take to bits. Very different. Oh, this one, by the way, the plastic flap in there is just like, honestly, it's like a polythene bag. It's just really thin plastic. And if you're in the UK, you have a toilet like this, and you flush, and it just goes shunk, and then a little sploosh of water comes out the bowl, and then you have to keep pumping the handle to try and get it to go. That's because that is split, it's ripped. And unfortunately, in many of the older ones, the only way to get that out is to take the whole cistern off, detach all the water inlet, the overflow fitted, detach it from the toilet bowl, and then actually undo it from below. Modern ones have a system whereby you can actually detach it from there. If you ever have to get a new one fitted or fit one yourself, I would recommend getting the one that you can swap that, and also at the same time buy a spare for the future, just in case. It will save you lots of grief. So let's take a look at the this newer system, which I come across so many faulty ones. They're just so flimsy and rubbish. But anyway, we have the water outlet at the bottom pipe, and we have a sort of little bung that goes into it to stop water flowing through that. And that is a shaft going up through that mechanism. And it also has a sort of little ratchet here and a little ratchet here. And there are floats. The floats have a matching sort of ratchet that will ultimately just click into that one as it goes past. And there's one at the top and there's one at the bottom. I'm going to draw these in the wrong place. I just know I'm going to draw them in the wrong place. But anyway, there's the one at the bottom. I pray I have drawn them in the wrong place. But the idea is that when you flush it, you saw it going up at the two different heights. If you just flush it part of the way, it latches onto this one first, but it doesn't latch onto the bottom one. And this is the part fill one that if you want the half flush, because it only lifts it up that small amount, it only latches on that. And it means that when the water goes below the level of this float, that little ratchet will swing in and it will drop it down and it will let that plug actually block the water outlet. If you pull it all the way up, it latches on that one, but then it passes right by it and it latches on this one as well at the bottom. And that means the water has to be much lower before this float here then swings out the way as well, and that releases it. So that's how they do the two-level flush. It's very straightforward when you see how it works. These are also modular. This was another dumpster dive find, by the way. I just thought I'd mention that. It was brand new, but it is a dumpster dive find nonetheless. So let's put this back on. I'm not sure if there's any point to putting it back on other than just to demonstrate once again. So this is the upper float, which we'll be seeing once I open this, but there is the plunger that's going up and down. Oh, you know what? Here's something else I can demonstrate. Because they're modular and they're designed for ease of installation and repair, if you turn this around, you can turn it around to various positions to suit where you want this cable to come out. But I should actually just, hold on, I'm just going to get the focus back up where we need it. Let's give something for it to look at. There we go, it's focused. The Dubai lamp box, very handy. But here's the seat. Here's the same arrangement for the overflow. Note that this one has a little clickable latch that is designed to take an extension for adjustable height. That wasn't there. But that leads down to this little port here that also bypasses the silicone valve that would seal that, so that if any water overflows, it will go down into the pan again. Here is the little plunger. Just soft silicone rubber. And if I do this thing again now that you know what we're looking for, here's the part flush where it only lifts up part of the way because my finger couldn't go down the full way because of that button there. And here's the full flush that just pulls it right back into the unit. So right back into the unit and just part the way into the unit. And that would then theoretically, well, maybe I can demonstrate that. Can I? Yes, I can. If I lift this up as if it's floating and then I push that, oh, it did kind of latch, and then when I let that go, it releases it again. Okay, that's more or less. It took me by surprise there because I was pushing that up, and when I press that, it actually wants to push it down to actually get past that. It wants to actually physically push that down, but it would be doing so against just air pressure, so it would do that. I can't really do anything with this one, but that's okay. Anyway, let us take it to bits. That's what we're here for. I'm going to have to use brute force for this, I think. I'm not sure how easy this is to actually come apart. It might be one of these ones that when you get one side out, the other one clicks in. It may all just disintegrate into mince. Oh, I can see one of the floats in there. I can see one of the floats. Oh, I can see the other float as well. Okay. Right, what else can I do here? What else can I get off here? Let's try taking the top off. I'm not sure how this comes off. I think I might be about to break it. I'm not really bothered. Oh, there we go. What do we have? Okay, right. Tell you what, I'm going to have to... Oh no! The thumbnail has just been detached partially. That's okay, there may be blood. Not to worry, this happens. So let's take a look in here. Let's get the lever back on again. So now we've got the little wire here. Pulling that up. How can I get in any closer? I'm just going to pause my turn. I'll just trim a bit of that nail off before it catches. Hold on, just bear with me one moment. Yeah, there's a little bit of blood. Not to worry, this happens. We have auto repair. That solves problems like this. I'll try not to get blood all over this. What about this? Oh, this now comes off. Excellent. So there's the one float. Can I get in here more? Hold on. Let's take this screw out. How long before I get blood over what I'm actually taking apart? It will inevitably happen. This might just be for changing the silicone washer. I'm not really sure. So that comes off. Yeah, you can change the silicone washer, and that bit comes off then. Oh, there's the little latch. Can you see that? The little latch down there. Let's zoom down on that without getting too much into blood vision. And there is the... Oh, that latch actually does both. That one little ratchet is first catching on this one down here. Well, actually, it'll be catching on the... Let's try and do this. Oh, I get it, I get it. This little plunger at the bottom, I think this is actually cantilevering against this other float to actually activate them both with one latch here. Very hard to say. I think I'm going to have to get it out, but then if I get it out, it won't all be in position. But I think, yeah, I think we're going to have to try and get this out. One moment, please. I shall just pause while I do this. Okay, that was quite tricky to get out, but I think we're ready to explore this. So here is the upper level of the float. Now note that this has two of these little latching teeth. It's got the high one and it's got a smaller low tooth. And the top one is the one for the part flush and the lower one is for the full flush right at the bottom of the tank. The float mechanism for the part flush looks like this. It's got this empty void in here, so this plastic bit floats on top of the water in the tank, and it also can be adjusted up and down. You can actually click that to a different height to adjust that limit. When you push this into that mode, that's this part flush mode. The first tooth that latches is this one here. It just clicks onto that, and because this is actually on a pivot, as this goes down, it's basically pulling that little ledge out of the way, and it's allowing that to drop down. So when it goes through the part flush, once it gets below that level and this floats drops down, it just knocks that off, and this can then actually drop down and it ends the flush. The other part of it is the this bit here, whereby this is the final stage. This is the bottom of the tank, and this engages this small tooth. So when you put this up, it latches a little ledge in there, and again, it's a pivoting system based on the water floating that float up. And when you do the full flush, it latches all the way up. It does the top one first, so it comes off the latch probably first, and then it latches the second one. And when the water level goes low enough, it kind of pushes that out and it drops down past that, and that's what ends the flush. So that appears to be how it works. It's kind of complex, but also fairly simple. You know, just this one plunger with the silicone diaphragm being pulled up between two latches and those being controlled by floats. But very interesting. So ultimately, I guess, if you have these and they give problems, maybe this will show you that, you know, I wouldn't say that this is super fixable in here, although you could possibly, if they've got that removable system, you could unlock it if it was leaking, and you could clean the rim just by wiping it around with a cloth or your fingers just to clean the silicone diaphragm on that if it was leaking. But if it's not coming down, if it's actually jamming up, then you can at least maybe narrow it down to whether it's the button that's jamming, if it's got dirt or anything in it and isn't coming out properly, or if, you know, I don't know if you could do much maintenance in this. It is just cheap plastic. Something worthy of note here, the way this goes in is quite intriguing. This has to go in underneath like that. I'm going to regret this, haven't I? And then when you push that down, it all loads in from the top. So that mechanism that's actually used to lift this plunger up loads from the top end here. Quite interesting, quite complex construction. It must have taken a fair amount of design. But it's very neat. It's very stylish. So let me know if you have similar systems to this in America, if it's the same brands even, and the same sort of operation of the double flush button, because it'd be interesting to know. I think this is fairly standard throughout Europe, but again, Europe is a strange place. It has lots and lots of different standards and preferred brands, so what might be popular in the UK might not be popular in other parts of Europe. But that's the way it goes. Interesting stuff.